Watermelon radish. The watermelon radish is a variety of daikon radish that originated in China, where it has been cultivated for centuries under the name Xin Li Mei, meaning beauty heart. From the outside, it looks like an ordinary green and white root. Cut it open, and the interior is a vivid magenta pink that fades to white near the edges, producing the cross-section that gave it its English name. The color comes from anthocyanins, the same pigment that makes red cabbage and blueberries dark. Raw watermelon radish has a mild, peppery flavor that softens considerably when cooked. It became popular in American and European restaurants in the 2000s primarily as a visual ingredient used by chefs in salads and garnishes, where the pink center creates a striking contrast against other colors. It is an heirloom variety, meaning its seeds have been saved and passed between growers for generations without commercial modification.
Romanesco is classified as either broccoli or cauliflower depending on which country you are in. Italians call it broccolo romanesco. The French call it Romanesco cabbage. Americans and Canadians call it Romanesco broccoli or Romanesco cauliflower. Botanically, it belongs to the same species as both, which is why nobody agrees. It has been cultivated in the region around Rome since at least the 15th century. The shape is the result of a genetic mutation that prevents the plant from ever fully flowering. Instead, the buds keep repeating in an expanding spiral pattern, producing a structure that mathematicians classify as a natural fractal. Each individual floret is a smaller version of the whole head, and each subfloret is a smaller version of that. The flavor is milder and nuttier than broccoli, closer to cauliflower with a firm texture that holds its shape when roasted or cooked.
Lotus root. Lotus root is the underwater stem of the lotus plant, which grows in ponds and shallow lakes across Asia. When cut crosswise, it reveals a distinctive pattern of hollow channels running through the pale flesh, producing the lace-like cross-section that makes it immediately recognizable. The lotus plant has been cultivated in China, Japan, and India for over 3,000 years, used both as a food source and in religious and ceremonial contexts in Buddhist and Hindu traditions. The roots are harvested in autumn and winter when water levels drop. The texture when cooked is crunchy and slightly starchy, similar to water chestnut, and it holds its shape well in stir-fries, soups, and braises. The hollow channels visible in cross-section are not decorative. They are air passages that allow oxygen to reach the roots growing underwater in low-oxygen mud.
Purple cauliflower. Purple cauliflower is the same species as white cauliflower. The color comes from anthocyanins in the outer cell layers, the same pigments responsible for the color of red wine and purple cabbage. The pigment develops in response to sunlight exposure during growing, which is why conventional white cauliflower is grown with its leaves folded over the head to block light. Purple cauliflower is simply allowed to develop without that shielding. The color fades significantly when cooked due to heat sensitivity of anthocyanins, though it can be partially preserved by adding an acid like lemon juice or vinegar to the cooking water. The flavor is slightly milder and sweeter than white cauliflower. Purple varieties were cultivated in southern Italy and Sicily for centuries before becoming available commercially in North American and European supermarkets. The color has no effect on nutritional content beyond the anthocyanins themselves, which act as antioxidants. Ube. Ube is a purple yam native to the Philippines, where it has been used in traditional cooking and sweets for centuries. The word ube comes from the Filipino name for the plant. The flesh is naturally a vivid violet purple, a color that intensifies when cooked rather than fading, unlike most purple vegetables. The flavor is often described as mildly sweet, with notes of vanilla and coconut, distinct from the earthier taste of purple sweet potato, which is a different plant frequently confused with ube. Ube became widely popular outside Southeast Asia in the 2010s, when Filipino bakeries and cafes in the United States and Australia began incorporating it into ice cream, cakes, and pastries. The color made it highly shareable on social media, and demand for ube products grew significantly as a result. The Philippines remains the primary producer and cultural home of ube, where it appears in a traditional dessert called halaya, a dense jam made by cooking grated ube with coconut milk and sugar. Yellow beet. Yellow beet is a variety of beetroot that produces a golden yellow flesh instead of the deep red of conventional beets. It belongs to the same species as red beet and shares a similar earthy sweetness, but the flavor is generally considered milder and less intense. The yellow color comes from beta-lane pigments called beta-xanthins, which are different from the beta-cyanins responsible for red beet's color. Unlike red beet, yellow beet does not bleed its color into other ingredients during cooking, which makes it easier to use in dishes where appearance matters. It also does not stain hands, cutting boards, or clothing the way red beet does. Yellow beet has been cultivated in Europe since at least the 16th century, though it remained a specialty crop for most of its history. It became more widely available in farmers markets and specialty grocery stores in the United States, Britain, and Australia during the early 2000s as interest in heirloom vegetables increased.
Chayote is a member of the gourd family, related to cucumbers, zucchini, and melons. It was first cultivated in Mesoamerica, in the region between southern Mexico and Honduras, and was a staple food of the Aztecs before European contact. The name comes from the Nahuatl word chayotle. Spanish colonizers spread the plant throughout the Americas and eventually to Europe, where it arrived in southern Italy in the early 16th century. In Australia and New Zealand, it is known as choco, a name brought by Chinese immigrants in the 19th century. The flesh is pale green, mild, and slightly crisp, tasting somewhere between cucumber and zucchini. Unlike most vegetables, the entire plant is edible: the fruit, the root, the shoots, and the seeds. In Latin America, it is eaten raw and salads, cooked in stews, and stuffed and baked. It is one of the few vegetables where cutting open the fruit reveals a single large flat seed embedded in the center.
Black garlic. Black garlic is regular white garlic that has been aged under controlled heat and humidity for several weeks. It is not smoked, fermented, or treated with any additives. The transformation is produced entirely by the Maillard reaction, the same chemical process that browns bread and sears meat, combined with the breakdown of alliin, the compound responsible for fresh garlic's sharp flavor. The process turns the cloves completely black and converts the firm, pungent flesh into a soft, sticky paste with a flavor described as sweet, slightly tangy, and reminiscent of balsamic vinegar or tamarind. The sharp, sulfurous bite of raw garlic disappears almost entirely. Black garlic was developed in Korea in the early 2000s and spread to Japan before reaching Western markets around 2008. It contains significantly higher levels of certain antioxidants than raw garlic due to the chemical changes during aging. It is now produced commercially in the United States, Spain, and Britain.